The following program contains material that may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
So frankly, I can't imagine handling this kind of news as a parent. I was watching a game one night, my phone rang, and the voice on the other end said, Rob, have you heard the news? That kind of call usually is not good news. And so I tuned right in, and I was like, well, what happened? And this man started telling me how another man in our community, what their family was going through. Leader in our community, CFO of his company, life going well, leader of his company, leader of his family, great family, right? Daughter, 17 years old, had everything in front of her in life. In high school, she was involved in things. She was involved in things in the community, in the church, all that kind of stuff. She was struggling with depression, and you can see this coming. She'd done some research online and figured out the right concoction of pills to take, and had taken her own life one night. This guy lives about less than a mile from me. Family didn't see her down at breakfast the next morning and went up to check on her, and this dad found his daughter dead in bed. And frankly, I cannot imagine the level of pain and anguish that this family went through. I can't imagine the darkness that is probably still with them as a family. The level of sadness, the level of just Category 5 storm that hit their life. Man, I lead into that story and share that with you to let you know that that is the kind of stuff that as a podcast we want to jump into and deal with, because that is the reality that many of us face in our life. Many of us know people whose lives have been impacted by suicide, whose lives have been hit with these levels of Category 5 storms. One pastor not too far from me told me that during COVID, he had a meeting with the city and the county that he was in and said, listen, we have got to get our middle school and high school kids together, because the mental health crisis that they are facing is going to last, and the impacts are going to be here far longer than this virus will be. I did some research on youth suicide, and youth suicide rates rose 62% between 2007 and 2021. Headline, people feel hopeless, one recent grad says. I'll put the link to this article and the stats in the show notes. But statistics from the CDC on teenage suicide up 62%. Like, are you kidding me? Men, some storms hit our life that change our realities forever. And I want to welcome you to this episode of The Next Stage. I realize that is a pretty dark way to jump into an episode. But I want to use that to grab our attention, to say, listen, the stuff that we're dealing with here, it really is, and it can be life and death. We're in the middle of a series called The School of Hard Knocks. And the first episode in this series, I believe it was episode 7, we took a look at the School of Hard Knocks 101, and we centered around this idea that hard knocks are part of being a battle-tested man. It's how you prepare for them and allow them to form you that really counts. I'd encourage you to go listen to episode 7. In this episode we're jumping into today, it focuses around your life and about as you step into life, things are going to hit your life. And these things are very real threats. I mean, this is not the movies. This is not some make-believe thing. This is not some online thing that you don't even know if it's true or not. the things that we face every day as men, they are real circumstances with real tragedies and real storms that hit real life and make real impact. And I have no doubt that everybody listening to the sound of my voice or watching on YouTube, you know families, perhaps your own, who's been impacted by suicide. Maybe for you it's not that. It's not that stark, and I hope it's not. But maybe it's the loss of a marriage. Maybe it's a disease. Maybe it's the loss of a job. The thing I know about those types of things, my life just like yours, we ask the question, what do I do? As we turn into this next stage, this 201 level of the School of Hard Knocks, we're asking the question, what do I do? Because the reality is, some things in life we have training for, right? We learn how to read, and we have somebody who's as wonderful as my wife, a second grade teacher who loves to teach kids how to read. They're walking us through phonics, and they're walking us through those tools, and they teach us how to read, or they teach us how to do math, or someone teaches us how to ride a bike. But who teaches us how to handle this kind of stuff in life? I'll bet for you, similar to me, nobody really gave me a handbook on that, right? Nobody really gave me that kind of training. And when this kind of stuff hits, we feel like a kid who's out in the playground trying to throw a football for the first time, and we just kind of let it fly, and it's, wobbling all over the place. And they're getting laughed at because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle it. And that's how we as men a lot of times feel in life, right? And we do many different things when that happens. We either hide, we act like we just fake it till we make it. We make something up, we just kind of waddle our way through and, just kind of wing it. But a lot of us are threatened to quit. And in this episode, I want to give you some very, very practical things to help you grab onto and know how, or maybe you're right in the middle of it right now and you're like, I'm so glad this is here. This is a tool for me. How do I handle these category 5 storms in my life? That's what we're jumping into today. And I want to speak to a part of you and a part of your identity that when you face stuff like this in life, maybe you want to give up. Maybe you want to just hide. Maybe you want to run away. Maybe you want to medicate. But very similar to the man who went through this episode with his family, he could have just given up. I'm sure he wanted to at times to give up. But there was something in him whispering, don't give up. Don't give up. There was a part that aspired to even walk through this storm. To walk through, to not give up, that didn't want to give up, that wanted to learn from it and grow from it. And I want to talk to that part of you today. The part that says, don't give up. Don't give up. Walk into this. Learn from this. Lean into this. So what do you do? I want to give you a couple suggestions that you can hang on to. Maybe you're right in the middle of this again and you're like, I've got to have some tools to walk through. Maybe you know another man who you're like, he needs some stuff to walk through. I don't know what to do. I'm going to give you a couple very practical ways that you can help somebody or help yourself. Maybe for you it's putting your mask on before you help somebody else. Great, let's do that. but very practical tools to help you learn what to do when you walk through this kind of stuff in your life. Number one, when you get knocked down, reach out. When you get knocked down, reach out. How many of us, when we run into things, our number one tendency is to isolate? I think that is a very almost primal response. Something happens, what's our body do? It wants to protect. I get injured, what happens? Inflammation rushes to that area. I get cut, platelets run, they protect, they help blood clot, they help stop. And we do the same thing. We isolate. We end up like animals sometimes, cowering in a corner, just protecting ourselves. But what if we were to do something different? What if instead of isolating, we learned to reach out? Is that vulnerable? Oh, you bet. You bet. But what if we were to cultivate men around us who we were in relationship already for the just-in-case moment? I mean, when the fecal material of life hits the fan and you've got to have somebody, what if those men were readily available and you could just reach out? I encourage you, build that band of brothers for when you need them. You can reach out to them. Goes back to podcast number one, don't go it alone. Thoreau said, the mass of men live lives of quiet desperation. What if instead we cultivated lives proactively, not reactively, but proactively, like Clarence the Angel said when he wrote on that note in It's a Wonderful Life, no man is a failure who has friends. Proverbs 17 says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. A brother is born for adversity. You know what? Having men around you who you can reach out to is one of the things that I would suggest. Cultivating that ahead of time. But if you are in the middle of it, reach out. One of the things I find, one of the most rewarding things in my life, and I don't know, I think it's just kind of my makeup. It's kind of weird maybe, I don't know. But I love to be the guy that people reach out to. I love it. For about 30 years of my life, I have cultivated this thing of just coaching others. I'm not a therapist. I have been a pastor. I've coached men for about 30 years, been in one-on-one mentoring, developing, discipling, training relationships. I love it. And I want to make myself available to be that man who, if you're in this spot, that you can just reach out to. Maybe you don't have anybody around you, but you're like, I want to reach out. I got nobody. That's okay. Maybe one of the most practical things for you is to send me an email. The next stage at Sherpa5280.com and just reach out. Put the word coaching in the subject line and let's talk about how I might be the guy that you can reach out to. I would love to play that role in your life. That's a big part of what I do. Just coaching other men. Not forever. Not making surrogates out of the world, but just coming alongside and being that Sherpa who helps walk with you for a while, maybe out of the hole that you're in and to the next stage of your life. Send me an email, let's talk about it. So not only when you get knocked down do you reach up or reach out, but when a friend gets knocked down, jump in. Jump in. Be the man who jumps down into the pit with another man. You don't need to be a professional life coach like me. You don't need to have been a pastor. You don't need a degree. All you need to do is care. When another man gets knocked down around you, jump in. Jump in. Brene Brown, I love her illustration of empathy. I'm going to put this link in the show notes as well. This little video that she made of it, and her voiceover in it is wonderful. She says, empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy is feeling with people. It's jumping down into the pit with somebody. And just sitting there saying, like my friend whose wife left him this week, man, I'm so sorry. I don't know what that feels like, but I'm just in it with you. Called him from across the country. Just said, listen, man, I've never been there. I've never experienced that. I don't have a card. I am not going to send you a book. I'm not going to tell you, she was a B word and you're better now anyway. No. It's just sitting there. Delivering no silver linings. Just jumping in and being with that person. Is it awkward? Can be. Absolutely. Not sure what to do? Not sure what to say? That's okay. The Jewish people had this down. Did you know that in Jewish culture there is a tradition of sitting there and saying nothing and just being with a person who is hurting? It's called sitting Shiva. Just being there. There's a protocol for what to do. They wear black, they mourn. They might bring potato salad or whatever Jewish people bring, kosher food. But they don't just shoot emails or, gosh, hope you feel better, or, man, your wife left you, you'll get another wife. They just sit there. Try it sometime. In that awkward time when you're like, I don't know what to say. Just go sit there and be there with that person. Your physical presence brings life. This man who lost his daughter to suicide. You know what his friends did? I heard these stories. They just showed up at his house. They just showed up. They held him. They cried with him. They didn't deliver a manual in suicide prevention, or here's what you do now, or here's how you screwed up, or here's what she should have done. They just sat with this guy and his family and held them and walked with them through this kind of darkness in their life. They just sat there. If you can be that man in another man's life, you have won at life. If you can be that kind of man who just jumps in the pit, just sits there. I remember when my daughters were young, okay? My daughter number one, who will remain nameless, was in trouble. And I don't know what she did. She did something. But my wife gave her a timeout, sat her on the step. She had to go sit there. Daughter number two, about a year and a half younger than her. You know what she did? She went and sat on the step with her. She just sat there. They just sat there together. My wife told me this story, took a picture of them sitting on the step together. The one was in trouble, the other one was just there with them. Middle children, I get you. That's what I would have done too. my brother Mike in trouble, I would have just jumped in with him. But that's what daughter number 2 did. That's empathy. That's jumping in. Might be just sitting on the step. It might be showing up at a funeral. It might be just going and being there. When your buddy gets knocked down, jump in the pit and go there with him. When you get knocked down, reach out. When a friend gets knocked down, jump in. But there's a much more personal side of this. For the person who's going through the hard knocks, they're going through those upper level seasons of life, those category 5 hurricanes that hit our life that just wipe a trail of destruction. If you're in that stage, or maybe you will be someday, or maybe you have been, the last suggestion I have for you is the one that I found to be most true. And that is reach up. Reach up. Reach out to a friend. Reach down with another man, but reach up. You know, the target audience for this podcast is not necessarily a man who has been to church his whole life. If you have been, we'll include you too. You're not going to hurt anything. But the reason this is even a podcast and not a church service is because most of the men I know aren't church guys. They're just not. They want to be good dads. They want to be good professionals. They want to be good husbands, but they don't necessarily find that church is their thing. If it's your thing, fantastic. I know a lot of pastors. I was a pastor. I don't have an axe to grind against the church at all, but the reason I even set that up is to tell you that if you're listening to this and you're not necessarily a church guy, that's fine. My belief in my experience tells me that the biggest storms in life require God-sized solutions. They just do. The biggest storms that come plowing through my life have always required a solution that's bigger than me or the advice around me. They do not require religious Kleenex or a religious Band-Aid or a meme or a Precious Moments little carved out figurine or a bumper sticker or a book. They require something real that I need in the real storms of my life. Get the real help you need when you're going through these kinds of seasons in your life, men. Get the real help. And I get it. If you have had a bad experience with church, me too. Everybody I know has. But just consider, if there is an almighty, all-powerful, present everywhere, at least intelligent designer of the universe, who created personality and happiness and love and emotion and beauty and all of that, if there is, don't you think he would care about you? I'm telling you, that's what I've experienced in my life. Because I've found that the biggest storms in my life, the worst hard knocks in my life, have required God-sized solutions. I know this episode has a lot of emotional stories in it, but I got to share this with you. My mother died very, very suddenly, about 6 months ago. Like suddenly. And I found myself on an airplane flight on a red eye from Denver, where I live, to Orlando, where my mom and dad live. I got there about 4 in the morning and grabbed a couple hours of sleep, and I remember laying on the bed in my parents' guest room, knowing that my mom was no longer with us, and knowing that my dad, who had been married to my mom for 60 years, was still sleeping in the room right next door. And I remember laying on that bed thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to walk through this with him? What am I going to say? Because if I were to identify the place in my body where this pain lived, it was deep in my gut. It was as deep in the center of my body as it could possibly be. It was the kind of pain that I had never felt in my life. Ever. And I remember that. The phrase they tell you when you get on an airplane, put your mask on before helping others. I hear it every time I get on a plane, which is about once a week these days. Put your mask on before helping others. I remember laying there in pain, and the words of Scripture that are timeless and I believe are true came to my mind. One that I had heard years earlier. It's in the book of 2 Corinthians 1:3. You can Google it. It says, blessed is the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Check this out. The Father of mercies and the God of all compassion, who comforts us in all of our trouble. And I remember saying, God, I need that to be true of my life right now. Unless this is complete BS, I need you to apply this right now as a medicine to my life. Because I don't need to get up and have all the answers for everybody. But I do have to be able to support an 80-year-old man who just lost his wife of 60 years. Another verse came to mind. It was Psalm 147. It said, God heals the brokenhearted. He binds up their wounds. And I lay there and I just reflected on that. My God, would you give comfort that I don't know where it's going to come from. And I need you to bind up this gaping wound in my life. And I laid there and I took a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And I'm glad my dad sleeps in a lot because he had been up super late too. But for a couple of hours, I just marinated my soul in that truth. And man, those promises, those things can be true in your life if you reach up. If you reach up. And that's my story. That's what I can share with you. I'm not going to sit here and argue whether or not the world was created in 7 days. I'm not going to argue anything having to do with some crazy, very distant question of philosophy, but I am going to tell you that is true. Why? That's what I experienced. And I stood a couple months ago with a woman on our street who's not religious even remotely. And I told her that story. Because she had recently lost her mom too. And she said, you know what? I had a very similar experience in my car as I was driving back to Nebraska to go see my mom, who was dying. And I said, God met you right there in the car. She said, yep, he did. That's just who he is. He reaches down. He's one who reaches down. But he just says, will you reach up? Will you reach up? Your reaction to this may be like, well, that's exactly what I need, Rob. Man, I need that. Then do that. Reach up. Grab that hand that's reaching down. And then reach out. You may be like, man, I've got some bad experiences with religion. Me too. Me too. But I don't have ever being abandoned by God. Ever. Men, where do you turn when you are facing life's worst hard knocks? Where do you turn? You reach up. You might be somebody who can reach down to another man, and then you reach out. Those three things: reach out to somebody around you, reach down to another man, and then reach up to somebody who cares more about you than you can ever imagine. My call to action for you is very simple. Number one, ask God to help you in your storms. You might journal your thoughts down. You might write them down. You might start to process that way. You might reach out and just say, I need a coach right now in my life. I'd be honored to jump in with you. But just begin to put that in practice. Reach out, reach down to another man, and reach up. I ask you to do those three things, and God will meet you in those places. Men, thanks for being part of this with me. I realize this has been a very emotional journey of talking about suicide and walking through death and all that, but those are the level of hard knocks that hit our life. And I just wanted to get gut level honest with you in how I found to be true to walk through those things. A couple of gold nuggets that we always leave you with, something to hang on to. I already gave them to you. In 2 Corinthians 1, it says, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies, the God of all comfort, who comforts you in your trouble. And that day when I was laying on that bed, I couldn't even get to the second half of that verse because it says, so that you might comfort other people. But I just needed the first part. Just hang on to that gold nugget. The other is out of the beautiful song lyrics of Psalm 147. God heals the brokenhearted. He binds up their wounds. Men, when you get knocked down, reach out. Reach down to another man, but reach up. That's my encouragement for you. And I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of The Next Stage. I hope it's meant something to you. And if you know of a man in your life, maybe it's not a man, maybe it's a woman, and you're like, you just need to listen to this. Great. Just share this. Send this to them. If this meant something to you and you're like, I just want to share a thought, then email me. The Next Stage at Sherpa5280.com. Would love to be in touch with you. And I invite you to join us in the next episode as we take a look at some very, very, very practical things. Once you walk through this, what can you do to deal with the reality of the hard knocks that are in your life? Thanks for joining us on this episode, and we will see you on the next episode of The Next Stage. Have a great day.